Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today, the first Building and Fire Board of Appeals meeting of 2018, January 2018. Thank you. May I have the roll call, please?
Sure. Board Member Tatulian?
Present.
Board Member Lee?
Present.
Board Member Aharonian?
Present.
Board Member Hennessian?
Present.
Chairman Kishishian?
Present.
Okay.
Thank you.
On to item number 2. Report regarding posting of agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on Wednesday, January 10th, 2018 on the bulletin board outside City Hall and on the city's website. Good to go to number 3. Presentations and commendations. The building official will present an overview of the building and safety program.
Thank you.
Good evening, or good afternoon, commissioners, president of the board. During our last meeting, we were discussing how usually the board, sorry, I'm over here on the side. Usually we just call you when we have an appeal. The duties of the appeals board is to hear appeals from decisions that the building official or the fire marshal makes. Last couple of years, we've been very good about not having a lot of those. We've been operating in a very high efficient manner and not having a lot of appeals come to you. It was noted that we should probably meet just to keep you informed of what's going on in the status of building and safety and the Fire Prevention Bureau so that you're aware of how the city's operating. So in that key, I just wanted to bring in some of the statistics of what building and safety does annually and what our program is for the upcoming year and give you just a little bit of background. First of all, our annual budget. We operate on a budget of between $5.5 and $6 million, depending on charges from our IS department. And we bring in revenues, pretty similar, from $6 to $6.5 million in the last few years. So we're bringing in the revenue that we're expected to pay for our budget and save a little for the coming years as inspections carry over from year to year on our operations. We have an annual valuation of permits somewhere between $200 and $220 million a year of construction in Glendale. In doing that, we perform between 2,500 and 3,500 plan checks and issue 12 to 13,000 permits each year. So it gives you an idea that we are staying busy. Primary functions. We provide safe buildings and structures for the community. We regulate construction on private property, not in the public way. We review the proposed work, we document the work, and we inspect the work. We're the quality control for construction in the city of Glendale. We also coordinate approvals and clearances with other sections of the city. So as a permit goes through the review process, and they have to comply with zoning codes and water and power regulations and health departments, we look at that and make sure that all the clearances for each of the permits that come in to be reviewed are obtained. We also look to make sure that all the fees associated with the permits are assessed and collected. So we have development fees for sewer fees, the Glendale Unified School District fees. We assess those and collect those here. Park and rec fees, library fees, urban art fees. So there's more than just building permits. We're the experts in knowing how those fees are assessed on each of the different projects. Primary operational sections. Most building departments are organized the same way we are. Here we have our permit service center, which has all of our different, or majority of the different agencies that review permits located in it. We man the permit technicians that review permit forms, disseminate information, collect the money. We also have a plan review section that reviews the plans that are needed for the different projects, and an inspection section. In the inspection section, we currently have 10 full-time positions, 3 hourly positions, 2 contract inspectors for all the work that's going on. We also have 2 assistant permit specialists also working there to help with the flow of the paperwork through the inspection section. The building, the Permit Service Center has 8 full-time employees and 2 hourly employees. So when we look at permit technicians and associate permit technicians that actually process the permits, that's the staffing that we're dealing with. Later on, you'll look at the key performance indicators that we have, and you see how many thousands of people we have come through our permit center, and we're handling that with a staff of basically 10 people. The plan check section, we have, my number didn't come up here. We have about 8 staff members in our plan check section. They're responsible for reviewing everything from the small projects that are done over the counter to the large high-rise and multi-use complexes that you see built along Brand and Central. As far as operations of building and safety, there's certain organizations that we belong to that I want you to be familiar with. We base our codes in Glendale on the state codes. The state code is adopted every 3 years. They use a variety of model code organizations in their adoption of the codes. We have ICC for the building code and for the residential code, for the fire code. We have NFPA for the electrical code. We have IAPMO for the plumbing and mechanical codes. They produce the model codes, the state reviews them and adopts it, and then shortly after that the city will go through and adopt those codes. Last year, the code amendments that the City of Glendale had was presented to this commission before we took it to the City Council. As far as the building code, there's a lot of different portions. I think one of the things I wanted to make sure that everyone understood is the variety of technical knowledge that's needed in building and safety departments. We deal with issues such as use and occupancy, building types of construction and height, fire and smoke protection, egress, exiting, accessibility, structural design, soil stability. We review building materials, electrical systems, mechanical systems, plumbing systems. We enforce the state's energy conservation standards and the green building standards. All that is through your building department. On a daily basis, we will respond to anywhere from 70 to 150 requests for inspections with our inspection staff. We routinely review plans over the counter, and on the larger ones, they take time. We perform complaint inspections, and although we don't want to talk about it, we're also one of our emergency responders. When we have earthquakes or fires or wind disasters or floods, we're also the ones that go out and will assist in determining whether buildings can be occupied or not. Behind the scenes, a lot of times, currently our permit service center is open from 7 a.m. to 12 noon, and we close in the afternoon. And one of the common questions that comes up is, well, what do you do with the rest of your day? Well, we coordinate all the financial transactions with our finance department. We coordinate all the upgrades in the technology for the permit issuance system and the inspection entering system with our IS system, IS people. We coordinate our plan reviews with our fire colleagues. We provide service releases for water and power and the gas company. And we're also we need to continually train the staff. With the codes changing every 3 years, we have a lot of mandated training and basically desired training. We want our inspectors, our plan checkers to be the most knowledgeable around. We focus a lot on continual education for all of them. And we're trying to get ahead in our filing of old permits and plans. It's pretty a daunting task when you see that when we issue 3,000 permits a year, we have to file them and keep track of them. And just that maintenance of records is a big thing that we do in the afternoons. We're also involved in public outreach, trying to get people interested in building and safety, understand what we do, and get ahead of the game on informing them. And so that's basically, I wanted to provide you with a nice, short, succinct background on all the things that goes on between our meetings. And I want to thank you for your time and coming here and dedicating it to the citizens of Glendale.
I want to thank you for that report. We appreciate that. I just have a quick question. You mentioned that you have about, you have 8 full-time plan check positions currently. Is there any consulting or outside consultant also available for plan review?
There is. We have about $300,000 in consulting money, and that's spread between our inspectors that we need on contract, because we contract for a couple of inspectors, and then also for plan check. We use it if the plan check backlog gets big. We'll use outside services to keep it reduced. Currently with our plan check staff, we're trying to send out less and less, but the change in the economy has led to more smaller jobs than the larger ones, and so you end up with a volume that sometimes we just can't handle with in-house staff, and we will send it out.
So, Jan, if you were to take a guess, what percentage of the work is done in-house? Do you have a number?
I would say between 85 and 90% is done in-house. The biggest expense on the contract is with our inspection side, and we're trying to evaluate the change in economic conditions, the demand for inspections, because while they're under construction, we may need some more, but we don't know how long the current heavy construction load is going to last, so we've been filling in with contract inspection help rather than hire full-time.
Well, hopefully for a long time.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I have some question.
Absolutely, please.
Years ago, I remember for appealing charge with application, everything non-refundable, $1,200, $1,000. Today, like when I'm talking about like 25 years ago, now how much they charge to appeal the application for?
Every appeal is different, and we try to treat it that way. Somebody has an appeal that we know will not take a long time.
Mm-hmm.
We will charge an hourly rate, and we will estimate maybe 5 hours. If they're coming in with an appeal where you need 20 hours of investigation just to see whether you're going to approve it or deny it, we will charge them for that time. So we've arranged our fees right now where it's based on an hourly rate.
Like
So that for the smaller constituents that have smaller problems, it's not as big a burden. The larger ones that require a lot of time, we can still recoup the cost for the city.
like $5,000, $4,000.
We haven't had one that large here, but we've been able to basically meet and come to an agreement on most of them, and that's why the board hasn't seen a lot of appeals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a long time ago was $1,000 or $1,200. You have to pay, fill up application, non-refundable, and then if you're lucky, you win the case. If you don't lucky,
Yeah. Well, it's still non-refundable, but we do try to make it proportional to the effort needed to hear the appeal.
Mm-hmm. And one more, you said 10 inspectors and plus 2.
Right.
2 like deputy inspectors?
They're not deputy inspectors. They're qualified inspectors, but they're not on staff. They're not city employees.
Yes.
We hire them through a contract company,
Mm-hmm.
and so they provide us assistance. When we need extra help, we can utilize their services.
Like big jobs, like we have lots of them on the streets. One inspector stay there all day, or just on call. You call for fire inspection, or electric inspection, or building inspection. Individual, they come and check it.
Yes, right now it's still, the applicant will call the day before,
Yes.
and for the majority, I might say 95% of them, they get next day inspections. But they need to call and tell us what kind of inspection they need, because we do have electrical, mechanical,
Yes,
plumbing, and
yes.
building inspectors. And we will give them a time range. We will not spend all day on one job. So they will call in what their inspection is, and we will go out and perform that inspection and move on and do as many inspections. Like it says, with 100 different inspections being called on any given day and 8 individuals, then we really need to prioritize and get them to the right places,
Thank you.
both geographically and job size proportion.
Thank you.
Of those 8 inspectors, is that all building and safety inspections, or is that electrical, plumbing, and mechanical mixed in within the 8?
Within the 8, we have all the different trades represented. They're building and safety inspectors, but we have some that have specialties in electrical, some that have specialties in plumbing, some that have specialties in mechanical. We're going through a cross-training program right now. Most of our inspectors, I believe all of them, have multiple certifications, so that our electrical inspector is also certified as building, so if there is a small, even commercial job that they can handle, we will send one person out to do both inspections. Same with plumbing, mechanical. Everyone has a multitude of certifications to make sure that they have the expertise. We have they're almost like super experts. We have some of the best knowledge for a mechanical inspector, for an electrical inspector, for a plumbing inspector, and they're also mentoring the other ones in those trades as we move along.
Well, that's pretty impressive. You mentioned you get about 70 to 150 inspections per day, and split that among 8 inspectors. If you do the math right, I think it comes out to be 10 to 20 inspections per day per person. Is that?
And
obviously it's doable, but it's
yeah, and that's why I said, like with the cross training, one of them may be a tenant improvement for the drop ceiling, and we may be able to send out the electrical and have them do the building inspection for the building permit and for the electrical at the same time. So
I see.
some of them, and that's why I said, 85 to 90 or 95% we do the next day. Some of them, if it gets that busy, and I think you brought up earlier off camera that the flu is going around. Sometimes when staffing gets decimated for unforeseen reasons, then we will have to carry over inspections. And we try to balance them, and we try to do it in a fair way. And a lot of that is actually working with the large projects. And when they're very understanding. We provide excellent service to them. But when we have unique situations, they're also very understanding of maybe skipping a day here or there just because of our needs.
Like concrete inspection, like they start pouring concrete early morning, and somebody going to inspect the rebars and watch the PSI, watch this, watch that. Like, I think somebody needs to stay there all day. I think that one, they hire deputy inspector from city, not from the owner, to check the job.
On those ones, we require that they contract with a deputy inspection, independent deputy inspector, either individual or company, and they are required by the building code, and it's noted on their plans, that they have this deputy inspector there all day. So they do watch the shipments of concrete coming in, they verify the slump tests on each one. We make sure that they also have those, and then we receive reports from those deputy inspectors after the fact.
Any other questions, board members? Okay. Well, thank you very much, and this board certainly appreciates the hard work that staff does. And of course, you're doing the right thing by keeping the projects away from this board. So something is.
Well, if any of these topics that you heard you want a little more information on, feel free to let us know, and we can also do a little briefing like this on some of our future meetings on any particular topic you want.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Next item. We have Mr. Doug Nichols presenting an overview of the Fire Prevention Bureau program.
Thank you, Celeste. Well, I'm going to defer to our Fire Marshal Thomas Marchant, who will kick us off, and then we'll take it from there.
Thank you, Douglas. I don't have a whole lot to say other than Happy New Year. Welcome back. It's good to see you on terms that are not a pellet of nature. Mr. Bear forgot to mention one thing, and that is that this is his first meeting as the official, building official. He was recently promoted by Mr. Lanzafame from deputy. You remember Jan Edwards, who has since left the city, and as you can tell, building and safety is in outstanding hands. For the last about 12 months, I've been serving as the fire marshal, appointed by the fire chief, Greg Fish, after Stuart Tom's retirement. Out of the almost 31 years I've been serving the citizens here in Glendale, I can honestly suggest that this has been the steepest learning curve of my tenure here. And I've got a wonderful staff. Our bureau, to give you an overview quickly, is broken down into two sections or units. What we like to refer to as the programmatic or the compliance unit, and then the fire engineering and construction unit. I've made it a rule never to be the smartest person in the room, and that's why, as you see on the slide here, my assistant, Douglas Nichols, oversees the programmatic compliance unit, and a gentleman who I know you've spoken with and probably met on several occasions, Jeffrey Halpert, my fire protection engineer, too. Permit services is where we do our plan checking and issue a myriad of different types of permits, and it's over at our main campus at 780 Flowers Street, where the Bureau oversees our household hazardous waste program, along with several other programs that deal with annual fire and life safety inspections. That includes our high-rise structures, 26, soon to be 27 of them, here in the city of Glendale, as well as a term that we refer to as Coupa, which will be explained here a little more thoroughly in a moment. The next slide shows our organization chart as it stands at this moment. And I literally mean this moment because it wasn't but an hour before this meeting we were able to make some updates. Sitting in front of you in the audience, you'll see members in uniform and you'll see members out of uniform. Our Bureau holds, when fully staffed, 17 individuals, including myself. And we have carried several vacancies for some time. I'm pleased to announce that the ununiformed individuals have about 6 days on the job, and literally their uniforms can't be made quick enough to equip them as of yet. And as I look around, I see individuals with over 36 years on the job. And so that organizational chart, while not complete, we are definitely working on. And we've had, I'd say, a rather productive year by being able to show you up to 3 new employees sitting in the audience now. Moving to the next slide. I'm going to hand it over to my assistant fire marshal, Douglas Nichols. He's been with the department for 27 years, approximately, and you'll understand when he's done telling you about the programmatic compliance unit, why he's been placed in charge of that unit. Douglas?
Thanks, Chief. And gentlemen, again, I want to thank you for being here. I must say before I forget to mention it, that just by your being here helps keep us from bringing projects to this board. When people know we actually do have a Building and Fire Board of Appeals, it causes them to shiver sometimes about maybe taking a step that they're uncertain about. We try to explain to them the pros and cons. We have some experts here in the codes, and we try to be very straightforward and honest with them. And I think because of that expertise and openness, they are fully informed of the decisions that they have in front of them, and usually with their expertise and our expertise combined, able to come to some very judicial decisions. But if not for your physical presence here, whether we utilize you to the full capacity that you're more than capable of, you serve us very well, and I appreciate that. And we all are very appreciative of your time. So with that, I just wanted to highlight a few items within what we call our programmatic. The reason being is that we have a number of programs that we are charged with in trying to enforce on a regulatory process for the most part. We have obviously the administration of our unit to maintain. We have the various programs that we administer, and then also the inspections that go along with those programs. One of the items that you're probably most familiar with is fire and life safety, where the typical inspection comes in, and most times people are seeing us look at their fire sprinklers, their fire alarm, their extinguishers, making sure everything's working properly, and that time and again is the typical routine that we have when we experience the public. They understand that, they understand what they have. This building is fully equipped with all those that I just mentioned. That we actually have various components within those, or categories of types of inspections, types of occupancy, types of buildings that we will actually inspect. We've listed a few of them here, such as public assemblies. This room here would be an example of a public assembly. High rises, mid rises, low rises. We also have residential care facilities, institutional facilities, hospitals and such, and educational, private and public schools. We are responsible for inspecting all those as well. And then we also have mandated state fire marshal inspection for multifamily dwellings, 3 units and above. And we combine that with Fire Prevention Bureau, as well as our company inspection program at the operations side of the house will also assist in that regard. Total there is about 740 inspections citywide on an annual basis. Next would be, as Chief Marchant was referring to, the Cooper program, which is an acronym for the Certified Unified Program Agency. We actually work on behalf of multiple state agencies as the representative, so to speak, here locally. And so we are charged to implement those state programs in a unified manner. And that was the intent, was that we have a single representative on site representing various state agencies for the various types of hazardous materials, hazardous waste, underground storage tank, above ground storage tank inspections that need to occur. So while we have 695 sites that we've identified, we have over 900 inspections on those sites, because several of them have multiple inspections on any given site, depending on the type of hazardous materials or the type of operation that may be conducted at those sites. Some of these are very complicated. For example, a gas station that might have 5 underground storage tanks is a very complicated inspection process, takes us days to complete. On the other hand, some of them may take a matter of 30 minutes because it's a rather routine inspection. The next category is for industrial waste inspections. We're also charged with that. We have about 500 or so sites around town. Again, those also are broken into various categories. We actually do have we call a categorical industrial user, significant industrial user. That we have things like auto repair shops, jewelry manufacturing, printing shops, car washes, and a number of other kind of facilities we don't specifically identify. Those also require specific inspections. So as we try to blend all these various inspections, we try to be efficient and conduct as many as we can in a single visit. However, some of them take a series of visits to complete. This slide kind of shows all of that together, where we have the 3 different components that we're responsible for. And as you can see, some of them overlap. And we do have right in the very middle 80 sites, over 80 sites, which have all of those inspections combined, where we are conducting industrial waste, hazardous waste, and fire and life safety inspections at the very same site. Sometimes we're able to conduct that at a single visit. Other times it may take multiple visits, depending on how complicated those sites are. So because of that, we need to have a wide breadth of experience and professionals on staff. And we do have just that. We do have a variety of experience from many different disciplines in order to conduct these various inspections. We're trying to have a lot of cross-training too. One of the kind of the mottos that we try to kind of enforce is to have skills in, or we say, not necessarily a jack of all trades and master of none, but it's a jack of all trades and master of one. that you need to know something really well, but you need to know a little bit about everything. And so that's what we try to do, and we have a lot of cross-training that we do in-house, but then also we do with some more coordinated training either through the state or other regional training and with other organizations as well. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to our Fire Protection Engineer 2, again, a licensed fire protection engineer, a rare commodity, and he's served the city well. Also, more years than me, 27 plus, and is really the face of so much of what we do around here. And it's a pleasure to introduce Jeff Halpert for this section of the program.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here today. Thank you so much for your time. Again, just want to very briefly, high-level overview, share with you a little bit about our unit, which I feel is the most important unit in the Bureau. But in any event, we do have some general things that we take care of in terms of administration, plan review, construction inspections. We're the unit that's mostly devoted to the construction and development process. We build them, and then we hand them over to Assistant Fire Marshal Nichols' group. So we plan review is probably the item that we're all most familiar with. Similar to building and safety, we are conducting review of plans that are submitted or over the counter. And this gives you a breakdown of approximately how many plans we review in a year. And you'll notice that building permits, we've broken them down into commercial multifamily, roughly 500, and single family, roughly little over 300. Fire permits or fire plans, around 500 a year. We serve at a public counter within Permit Services Center, and in a year we serve approximately 1,900 customers. Many of those customers come in with a plan and walk out with an approval. Some of them just come in with a question. They need some advice. They need some feedback. They just have some questions they need clarification on. And sometimes it's just some kind of simple permit, such as a campfire or some event permit, things that we can handle over the counter very quickly. For plans that can't be done over the counter and they need to be submitted, over the past 12 months, we've been averaging roughly 32 days of turnaround time, and that's 32 calendar days. We've been trying to maintain as short a turnaround time as possible in order to give good customer service. And then once the plans are approved, it has to get built, and that process involves our new construction inspections. In a year, we perform approximately 2,300 inspections. And it's kind of surprising that for the last several years, most of those inspections were done by one single inspector. We sometimes have a half of an additional inspector. Sometimes we've had two. It's gone up and down over the years, but the consistent part's been one inspector dedicated to new construction. And the breakdown amongst those inspections is mostly sprinklers. Almost half of the inspections are sprinkler. The other half are split between fire alarm, special extinguishing systems, and the fire life safety final of a project. The inspection process is probably one of the most critical parts. We can spend all day long doing a plan review and having a perfect plan, but if nobody verifies what's on the plan is carried out in the field, it was all for naught. So that inspection process is extremely important. And it's a quality control. Sometimes the plan checker misses things that the inspector will notice in the field, so it's kind of a quality check. It's an extremely crucial part. A lot of text on the screen. I will not take your time to read all these to you, but this is just kind of, again, overview of some of the other things we do that, that didn't fall neatly into the previous slides, but there are a lot of functions we perform out of the fire engineering unit. Things like code adoption, fire flow, special event permits. We review license applications for things like business, dance, live entertainment, all the planning reviews, land entitlements. We review those as well. And never a shortage. Sometimes we have to deal with the less interesting things like being the legal liaison on enforcement cases. Those are very time intensive and involve a lot of work, but it's usually involving something that's a very difficult process. Luckily, we have very few of those. But again, we rise to whatever the occasion brings to us. And that is pretty much the fire engineering unit.
So, gentlemen, again, Happy New Year. Thanks for having us and allowing us this opportunity to give you a quick overview. But the bottom line is we appreciate your assistance in providing building and fire and life safety in this city, and knowing that we have this body here to come to make some sometimes rather difficult decisions. Fortunately, we don't meet that often, but we really do thank you for your time.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Question. We enacted some new codes. I think one of them was red flag warnings that no barbecues or fire pits. How's that coming along? Has there been any people going out for them, or?
The individual who actually began, that would fall under our vegetation management program. And Mr. Nichols actually wrote the program back in the 1990s. But as you can tell lately, during the most current, latest season, I might add, of my soon-to-be 31-year career, Glendale stood the test. So, Doug, if you want to talk to the ordinance or the code changes, please do.
Thank you. Actually, we haven't had anything recent. It's been a number of years, and it really was more of a clarification than it was any type of new code or new ordinance. It was in conjunction with, at the time, neighborhood services, code enforcement, as we were getting, I wouldn't say a rash, but a number of calls and concerns. And typically this happens when there's been a series of years without rain, and so you have a drought. You get a few months of dry weather, you get a few high temperatures, you throw in a couple of windy days, and all of a sudden people get concerned about their neighbor's barbecue. And so we had a number of those incidents. We tried to clarify what the codes were and weren't intended to cover. And so we, obviously, with red flag days, it does become a little more concerning when we have those types of issues. But really it was a matter of clarifying, what the code calls out. And so it becomes an education program. It's very difficult to police barbecues, and we try not to do that. But it is also incumbent on us when we do get 911 calls or even just informative calls, questions, to pass along that information. So we just let folks know, okay, you need to be smart about this. Let's not do this when we have windy weather, Santa Ana winds, red flag warnings, away from vegetation, away from structures. And continue to, it's typically something we do on a routine basis. Now, I know with this last code adoption process, we actually had some amendments that were built in to the code process, which, again, kind of clarified this. While it was practice and policy, we just tried to clarify it in the codes as to what we have been trying to maintain all along. And so it really wasn't new to what we did. It was just now we had it on paper and could actually point to it. And so that's where it's benefited us, where we can actually show people rather than just a brochure. It's in this nice, code book, and it has a little more meaning. So it's been very helpful in that regard.
Mr. Kajusha, I have a question.
Please.
Since August, we didn't have any meeting, so this is the first meeting after that, and probably we had the Latuna Canyon fire. And I'd like to ask the marshal if our city's northwestern part has been affected, and the structures have been affected with the flames of the fire that came all the way to Glendale.
We were affected by the Latuna fire. What you won't be able to do is see from, the foothills, from the 210 freeway, the 2 or the 5 corridor, the 300 or so acres of the city of Glendale that was affected. It's very high atop the border of the north and southern Verdugos, but approximately 300 acres were affected, which in comparison to the number of acres burned, we had a small dog in the fight. However, there was no telling how much further that fire was going to go. And using our relationship with the Los Angeles County, the LA City, the Burbank, Pasadena, and CAL FIRE State, along with the United States Forest Service, we had all hands surrounding the city of Glendale, city of Los Angeles, and Burbank in that fight. So your answer, sir, is yes, 300 acres. There's a lot of acreage that was saved. Not a single structure lost within the city boundaries.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Just a comment.
Please.
Keep up the good work.
Thank you, will do.
Actually, on that note, I want to go back to the question that you had previously. I'm not sure that I know what the current standards or the policies are in the city of Glendale. If you can please explain that one more time as far as the open flame is concerned outdoors, whether it's a barbecue or fire pit or whether it's gas burning or wood burning appliances and things like that. What is the regulation in the city of Glendale, if you can share that with us?
Without going into the specific codes, I'll just give you a couple of quick pointers. Certainly, it's basically a specific distance from vegetation, horizontal and vertical. We try to maintain 10 feet clearance vertical and also 30 feet horizontal, and then 10 feet from structures. And structures could be the back of your house, it could be the side of a deck, it could be a gazebo, something of that nature. We're just trying to keep it isolated where if some sparks or embers could escape the fire, so to speak, that it's not in the immediate vicinity of something that's combustible and could immediately ignite and then carry that fire further than you wanted it to be. So that's, in a nutshell. I'd be happy to provide those specifics for you if you're interested and give you the actual numbers, distance, but that's in essence what we're trying to do is keep it isolated because, as you mentioned, there are barbecues, there are portable barbecues, there are fixed barbecues, there are fire pits, and heck, you go to the hardware store and the fire pit store, and there's just a plethora of these things. And so we're not in any way going to start itemizing what you can or can't have. It's just a matter of being smart and being safe. In addition to when there are extreme conditions, that's the time you need to take a little extra caution. And so basically it's just emphasizing common sense and maintaining that separation.
So that's pretty good, thank you, but does that apply citywide or it's only for the fire districts, I suppose?
We have emphasized certain specific requirements for the high fire hazard area, but then even, for example, barbecues are not permitted on the balconies of multifamily dwellings downtown. So there are some specific areas, but it is the focus on the wildland areas where we could have more prone to vegetation fires. But again, we have buildings all over town that are combustible, so you still need to be smart wherever that barbecue happens to be.
Okay, thank you.
So for example, sometimes I'm just looking at the structure at the Americana. Some of those patios do have barbecue grills on them. Is that supposed to be a no-no, or is it?
Well, we do inspect as best we can, and of course there are, excuse me, depending on the fuel type, it could make a difference on what it actually is. But yeah, there are some instances where we have to take a little extra precaution, but as you can imagine, most of the time it's somebody informing us who doesn't own the barbecue of what they're observing, and then we'll follow up as best we can with that.
Thank you.
Okay. And if I may ask one more question for Mr. Halpert. This has to do with residential fire sprinklers,
Yes.
and I think it would be helpful to know that what is the city of Glendale's code and policy for single-family dwellings only, whether it's brand new or additions and alterations. I get this question asked all the time, and I would like for the experts to explain.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, it'd be my pleasure.
Thanks.
And thanks for asking. That's a great question. It's a very common question on a lot of people's minds. As you're all aware, that the state of California actually passed or adopted a model code language that required fire sprinklers in all new single-family homes. That started in 2010. But the city of Glendale had actually been progressive since 1989. We've had our own local ordinance that required fire sprinklers not only in new homes, but also in existing homes that met certain triggers to trigger the fire sprinklers. For example, a single-family home that undergoes a remodel or addition. If that remodel or addition, the valuation of that work is tabulated to be more than 50% of the valuation to rebuild that house today, then fire sprinklers would be required. And in fact, that valuation is sort of carried on an open book, so to speak, over a 3-year period. So if building permits are piecemealed over a period of 3 years, it would be cumulative. So as soon as 50% is hit, fire sprinklers are required throughout that home. In addition, fire sprinklers are required even in detached garages in Glendale, and we've been doing that since 1989. And as we know, that is a very significant life safety value to have in our city, because unfortunately many people do illegally live in garages. And so that was considered extremely important at the time and continues to be. So that's essentially a synopsis of our fire sprinkler requirements for single-family homes.
Okay. And that's again citywide, right? It's not just in the hillside fire.
That is correct. That is citywide. Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Pleasure.
Yes.
I heard like maybe 6-7 months ago, garage you can turn to bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
We can do that.
That is correct.
That is correct. Right now, the city council has actually recently adopted or is going to be adopting accessory dwelling units. And that was a effort by the state of California to try to increase affordable housing in all communities. And they came up with a law that allowed homeowners in single-family lots to convert their garages to dwelling units. They had to comply with a series of conditions, and cities can also put those conditions on. But yes, the opportunity to convert a garage to a full dwelling unit that could be rented is now the law of California.
How about the parking?
The parking is dealt with city by city, and I was not involved in the drafting of the ordinance, although we have Mr. Lanza fame here who knows everything about it.
If you're converting a garage, you have to replace the parking on site, but it does not need to be covered. So if you have a long driveway, you can park 2 cars in the driveway. For the most part, the accessory dwelling unit needs 1 space, but if you're within a half a mile of a transit stop, for all intents and purposes, that could be a bus stop, which covers the entire city of Glendale. You do not have to provide parking for the accessory dwelling unit.
Well, that's pretty much in line with the state regulation. Is City of Glendale going to be more restrictive, less restrictive, or it's pretty much the same thing?
Cannot be more restrictive.
Okay.
The state law that Mr. Bear had referred to is what we have to live with. There are some small modifications that we can do as a city, but for the most part, it's ministerial.
How about the square footage that I heard Glendale?
Square footage that was proposed to the city council is a maximum of 500 square feet, which is consistent with our accessory structures, guest houses and pool houses and whatnot. The city council heard that last night. It comes back to them on the 30th, where they'll continue the discussion. But as I say, staff's proposed ordinance limits it to 500 square feet.
Even though you just mentioned that we cannot be more restrictive than the state law?
State law on that permits you to set a ceiling and a floor. The ceiling can be it has to be reasonable. I think the minimum is 150 square feet, and then the maximum is 120. You can be somewhere in between that for a city. The city can determine the size in between that range.
But, yeah, please.
What was the numbers again?
150 to I'm sorry, I say
1,200.
to 1,200.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
I
Caught me
said,
on the math.
I said 120 to 150. I go.
Missing a zero.
150
30
at
square
a
feet?
We know.
floor to 1,200.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Well, again, as Jan mentioned before, there's a reason that state passed this ordinance, and that's basically provide housing if there is a housing crisis, which I think there is. So by city of Glendale being more restrictive and limiting the square footage from 1,200, which is a nice residential unit, to 500 square feet, which to me is the smallest studio you can possibly find, how are we complying with that intent? Or it's not a discussion at this point for this board?
That is in the zoning regulations as opposed to the building regulations, so appeals on that wouldn't come to you. But
I wish it would.
I know.
I'm not an opponent of that at all. I'm
Mr. President, I
all for
would
it.
say that it comes back on January 30th, and your input would certainly be welcomed by the city council.
Thank you.
I wish my wife, she's not watching this program, because she was fighting with me, why we cannot put the guest bathroom in the garage facing the entrance. I said, no, this is a two parking garage, we stay two parking, this is a code. Now it's changed, and she's going
So on that note, is that going to be a restriction on where the single-family dwelling is located, or is it against citywide?
It is citywide on any property that has a single-family residence. So if there's a multifamily, you've got a duplex, you cannot put an accessory dwelling unit there. Again, it is, and I understand your comment. Housing advocates would like to see as many and as free as possible. Planning advocates are concerned about the change of character of single-family homes. But the reason for our 500 square feet is to try and keep it as an accessory unit, not a primary residence.
And that accessory unit can be, again, as you mentioned, either a conversion or a brand new, right?
That is correct. If you are converting a garage, you do not count it against FAR. If you are building a new structure, it is counted as part of FAR.
Oh, that's interesting.
Okay?
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We certainly learned a lot today. Any other questions, board members? Well, on that note, I forgot, Mr. Bear. I wanna congratulate you for your new position as a building official. It's a well-deserved
Thank you.
position, and I know you've been for the longest time. You've been waiting for that, and it's definitely well-deserved. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
On October 10th, we congratulated him in this room.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I wasn't here. All right.
Going on to item number 4. Do you want to move on?
Please. Yes.
So we're going to go on to the approval of meeting minutes dated August 16th, 2017.
Okay. May I entertain a motion to approve the minutes of August 16?
I
move.
I'll second.
Okay.
Thank you.
Aye.
Did you want a roll call?
Please.
Board Member Hanessian?
Yes.
Board Member Lee?
Yes.
Board Member Tutulian?
Yes.
Board Member Aharonian?
Yes.
And Chairman Kishishian?
Yes.
Going on to item 5, oral communications. Today we have none. And item number 6, old business. Today we have none. Item number 7, new business. Today we have none. And item number 8, reports for information only. The building official will review the building activity report and monthly income summary along with the key performance indicators as attached in your packets.
I'll just ask if you have any questions on them. They're basically numbers indicating how busy we are. Kind of went over the annual amount. These are specific ones for certain dates. If you have any questions, let me know. The second item was Building and Safety Month, coming up in May again. We've been very active the last 2 years, 3 years. We have actually been recognized by ICC for our efforts, and this year, one of our employees, Celine Sarkalou, has actually been participating in the advance information and studies by ICC for Building and Safety Month. Last year, we had our career fair. We had individual trainings. This year, the new topics are on the website with ICC. Love to have you familiar with ICC, so I'll refer you to them because they are one of our primary benefactors for building and safety departments throughout the country. The different topics there, we will have things, I think there's 5 of them this year, and we will have weekly updates on it. The question I have for you is, do you want to meet in April or May? May during Building and Safety Month, or April prior to Building and Safety Month, so you can see what our final program is?
April.
April.
Prior to the,
Yeah, right.
is that what you guys? Okay.
That gives us 3 months. That's just right on the schedule you were hoping for 2 months.
April 18th.
There you go.
It's April 18th.
Is that your birthday? Do you remember that?
My birthday is in July.
Oh, okay.
I hope that's a Wednesday.
That's,
It's very easy.
Okay.
All right.
You have 90 days.
Okay.
You calculate from today, and it comes to April 18th.
I will take your word for it.
smartphone.
There you go.
Well, you can check.
But
the
we all have
calendar.
cell phones, so we can.
You can check the calendar.
Yeah.
Check the calendar.
Yeah, that's going to be 4/18/18.
Very good.
Okay. Is that
That's
is that
good
Wednesday?
math, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
By the time
Did
we're
I
gonna
win the
receive,
lotto?
Yes. So we will schedule it for in April, and we'll have a nice presentation on Building and Safety Month for you.
Okay. Sounds good.
of course, we're gonna get some information from, okay.
Right.
We got to go over the monthly report, or you just want us to do a review?
I just wanted you to have it so
Okay.
you can see it. If you have any questions, let me know.
Okay.
I don't have any questions.
All right. I guess the cost recovery factor, you've explained that before. Maybe that's something.
Yeah,
worth,
we're slightly above,
Yeah.
which is good. Anything above 1 means we're actually meeting our budget and our projections. We try not to be excessively above that. We can only charge what it costs to provide the service. Although a lot of the services we're collecting money for now are for future services, because when we collect the permit fees, they're actually the payment for future inspections. So if we go above it, it's not a big worry because we have plenty of inspections coming.
Any questions on the report?
Motion
Okay.
to adjourn?
Thank you.
You want to hold a motion to adjourn? Anybody?
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn our meeting.
I'll second.
Second, Stephen.
Thank you.
Thank you.